Hey everyone, I'm Burke Allen for the virtual Rocket Boys Festival. Thank you so much for watching. And if you're watching live, you can ask questions of our guest in the Facebook Live chat or on YouTube. And we're wrapping up the third day of the virtual Rocket Boys Festival today with a special cast reunion of the movie Mine 9, and also with the director and producer of the film, Eddie Mansour. And the reason that Mine 9 fits into the Rocket Boys Festival, in 1999, the movie October Sky brought the Appalachian experience to millions of people around the world who had never really known what went into the mining industry, the Appalachian way of life. And of course, it was set in the late 50s as Homer Hickam saw Sputnik fly over the town of Coalwood, West Virginia. His father, very famously, was the foreman of the mine, and there was an awful lot about the coal mining industry in that film, but it was about mining as it was in the 1950s when coal communities like the town of Coalwood was a bustling place, and where there were lots of safety precautions that were in place, and it was a company town that employed everyone from the town doctor to the town minister. And they even paid folks with company scrip, which was money that was only available to be spent in the company stores in those company towns. The mining industry of the 2010s is completely different, and director and producer Eddie Mansour brought it into focus with his claustrophobic thriller Mine 9, and we're grateful to have Eddie and several of the cast members join us from all over the world. And one of the great things about a virtual Rocket Boys Festival is we can bring people in who may not have been able to come back to West Virginia for the actual event. So let's see if we can get folks on the line. And let's start with the director and producer, Eddie Mansour, who I think is with us in Atlanta. Eddie, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining us from Southern California, Los Angeles. Kevin Sizemore, are you there?
I am here, Burke. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being a part of things today. And let's head out to Missouri for cast member Clint James. Clint, are you there?
Yes, sir. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Burke.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. And let's start, Eddie, with you. You're a West Virginia boy originally. You're a native mountaineer, and you decided to make a movie about your neck of the woods. It seems to me, as a fellow West Virginian, there's an element of risk in that. You know, what if you didn't tell that story correctly? What if people from back home, where we all grew up, looked at Mine 9, which is available, of course, on Netflix and Amazon Prime and iTunes, and had a theatrical run? What if you didn't get it right? Were you scared of not doing your home area justice?
It certainly was something that was in the back of my head from conceiving of the concept, was that you have to portray the coal miners with justice and make them not stereotypes and make them real people. And that was highly important. That was something that was always in the back of your head, because if you don't get it right, or if you don't honor them, then it's going to come back and haunt you. And I always knew, no matter what we got right, there was going to be some people who said we got it wrong no matter what. So sort of a double-edged sword.
So you're a West Virginia boy originally, but had lived in Los Angeles for many years. You've been away from home. How did you get yourself back into that mode to make sure that you got it authentically correct?
Well, I've never left that. I always consider myself a West Virginia Californian. So that's what I am. And even though I live in Georgia now, my parents are still back in West Virginia and my family. And I mean, I got it right just by going back home and being around the people I love the most. So that's really what it is.
Kevin Sizemore, you're a native West Virginian, one of the native West Virginians that was attached to this project. How important to you as a mountaineer was it to be a part of this movie? I mean, did you pursue Eddie to get in this movie? And you know, tell me about the heart piece of this for you.
Well, there's two answers to that. Yes and no. I pursued him in a way, but I pursued him on a different way, because I was introduced to him by one of the producers on the project, who contacted me and said, you and Eddie should connect, because I've worked with you before, Kevin, and I've told him about you, and you're from West Virginia. And initially, one of the parts that I was offered, I love the character, but something told me that Daniel was who I was. I wanted to be Daniel. I loved that character, and I passed on the character that was offered to me and said, I'm willing to audition for Daniel. And he had something completely different in mind for Daniel. He didn't see me as Daniel, and I kind of begged him, and I auditioned for it. He liked my take on it, and then I told him, I said, you have to cast me, because there's no way in the world you can do a film about the coal mines of West Virginia without having a boy from Princeton, West Virginia in your movie. So I just hitched myself to his wagon and followed his lead, and he told me which way to go and how high to jump, and I said, yes, sir. And it's I know I'm going to look back years from now and say this is one of the best projects I've ever been a part of, because of what it represents, what it was about, the friends I made on it. I had a plumber at my house yesterday who said, oh, dude, I just watched a movie you're in called Mine 9. It was phenomenal. I mean, it just, that's special.
And the movie is great, and it won a bunch of awards, but more than anything else, it's a fun movie, a thriller to watch. You can't look away from it. Clint James, you're not a West Virginian, and I want to ask you this question that came up on a previous panel as part of our virtual Rocket Boys Festival. A young lady in the tourism business in West Virginia participated from the Beckley Exhibition Coal Mine, which is a huge tourist destination for folks that come into the Mountain State. And she said that the vast majority of people that come there have no concept of what life is like in a coal community. They have no point of reference to that. And so when you sort of parachuted in to do your role, you're not a West Virginia guy. What opened your eyes? What surprised you that you learned about West Virginia, Appalachia, and the mining industry?
To begin with, it's what I found out was the community involved. I mean, it's a really tight-knit group out there. And from my background, it's a bit tight-knit as well. I'm a good old boy from Missouri, and having a parachute in there and having Eddie's direction and being surrounded by the great cast members who they brought it. They had some of the, I was taken away from their accents that they had, and then I went a little bit deeper, and I was using my brother's voice. He's a good old boy from Missouri, and then I went all West Virginia, and Eddie told me to take it deeper, and just went for it. But yeah, it's an interesting community out there, and it's all about love and hard work, and I learned a lot on that shoot.
Eddie, you did some filming inside a mine. And you also did some, I guess the epilogue would be the term for the film, some filming outside the mine with real West Virginia coal miners, real Appalachian guys that gave, I think, the movie some authenticity. There's a picture, if you're watching right now, of you and some of the other cast members from Mine 9. How important was it to you to have those real guys at the end of the film who didn't have anything to do with the narrative of the movie, but certainly added some authenticity? Was that an important piece of it for you?
It was probably the most important piece for me. It was a prerequisite. Actually, these are the only two gentlemen, Clint and Kevin, just due to circumstances, that weren't able to go with this, but it was a prerequisite for the actors, because I knew they weren't from Appalachia, that I took them to the coal mine where we were able to film at, and took them 2 miles under the earth, and they all got to meet the real coal miners. They got to ask them questions, and they actually, just got to spend some time with them just to see that, it's they're going, they depend on each other to go to work and to come out of work every day. They depend on each other so much. So there's a camaraderie between coal miners that I didn't think the actors would understand. So I brought them to the coal mine. They got to meet the real coal miners. They got to go underground. And I think that it helped everyone's performance severely, because, it just gave them that authenticity that they needed. Just actors need something to latch onto. And the coal mine was actually in Virginia, but not too far off the West Virginia border. So these guys in the epilogue, we filmed for a day and a half underground. And anytime you see coal miners operating real equipment, it's all the people from the epilogue. It's really them under the ground filming. We just went to a set in Atlanta, Georgia, and when filmed somebody from behind and put one of these guys' face there. But all those people that were in the epilogue were actually in the movie. Anytime you see people actually mining coal, because we couldn't let the actors operate that kind of equipment. But for the second part of your question, like that epilogue, it's my favorite part of the movie. Like nobody can display what those guys gave their heart at the end and just talked about the bond and the family. And I think that was just the icing on the cake for the movie. And it's above and beyond my favorite part.
There's a great little synopsis of the film there on the screen. 2 miles into the earth, 9 Appalachian coal miners struggle to survive after a methane explosion leaves them trapped with only an hour of oxygen. Eddie has called this a claustrophobic thriller. Kevin, had you ever been inside a coal mine before you did this work on the sound stage in Atlanta?
Yeah, years ago when I was growing up in Princeton, I did. Again, years ago when I was probably, I don't know, 14 or 15 or so. I know I didn't go as deep as what Eddie did when they went down and did all the research for the film and the filming stuff. I know I didn't go that deep, but I was deep enough to know that it's frightening. It really is, especially like you said, it's claustrophobic. I mean, I could feel the hard to breathe and just that moment of just like, what would happen? It's how do you get out of here? And then you realize these men and women, they just put their life on the line every time they go underground. And every time we come home and we flick a switch on at the house, it's due to them, thanks to them, that they're doing all that hard work.
I think there are lots of folks around the country, around the world, that probably don't realize that, over a third of America's electricity is still supplied by the coal industry. There's a photo up of you in character there as Daniel in that film. You look a little different when you're not all gussied up like you are on the left.
Yeah. I like to go out like tonight's Halloween. I mean, this weekend's Halloween, so that's going to be my Halloween character, is the Mine 9 guy.
You have done a whole variety of different kinds of TV shows and films, and some of them are listed on the screen there. You were on Fear the Walking Dead. You played Coach Stearns in Woodlawn. You've got a new miniseries called The Dark, available on PureFlix. But in all of those, there's an element of make-believe. For Daniel, you had told me once that you knew guys that were like Daniel and the other guys in Mine 9. You knew them. Does that make it easier or harder as an actor to play a part when you know people that are very similar to the character you play?
Well, it does make it easier because you do have something to pull from. Every actor who is trying to portray something on screen, you try to make it as believable as you can. It's the first time it's ever come out of your mouth, even though you've said it 50 times in your mind or in rehearsal. So when you have some of those things to pull from, it's easy. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to conflict and you blur too many things together. Then you start confusing yourself. So it's kind of good to latch onto one style and then make it your own. Because if you continually make it that person, you're never going to be that person. Then it becomes a caricature. I've always thought it becomes a caricature of that person. So I would, I remember my friend back home, his dad was a coal miner. And I just remember him coming home looking just like I look in that photograph. And I didn't understand it because I was really young at the time, but I would take elements of the conversations we would have and I would tap into that character a little bit. But it is easier, I guess, to have someone to play off of, but I think you can also get yourself in trouble if you try to mimic.
Eddie, I was fortunate enough to be in New York City with you and the other cast members when you did a screening right there in Manhattan. And it was fascinating for me, the questions that came from the different folks in the audience. And, if you're not from the Appalachian region, coal mining and has become this political football. And there are folks that are, so against it, and there are folks that are so for it because it's a way of life. And I thought it was interesting when people started to lure you into that political conversation, what your feedback was about the movie. And I'd love it if you would share sort of what you said and what your thoughts are about that for the folks who are watching today.
Well, first and foremost, I wanted to make a good claustrophobic thriller and honor the coal miners that we're portraying. But I certainly did not want to make a political movie. I wasn't trying to say coal is bad or do anything that negatively affects coal. Like, I'm for coal miners 100%, and I just wanted to tell a good claustrophobic thriller that really only someone in West Virginia who understands what coal mining can tell. But really, I would just tell people that you need to take your politics out of you in this movie, and just see what these men and women do for us. Like, and that was the best part. Like, we were in Chicago, New York, New Orleans. We got a bunch of like people outside of the industry would ask these questions, and then and you just say like, look what they do for us. By the end of it, everybody would say, wow, I have a new appreciation for when I turn on my light or for what these people do for us, because the coal miners aren't the people politicizing all this. They're just the people putting their lives on the line going to work so we can have electricity.
Yeah, so, I think there's a great, and Clint is a United States Air Force veteran, and thanks for your service. I think there's a correlation between folks who are in the military and coal miners. You may disagree with the military action, but you have to support the troops. You may disagree with the coal mining industry, but these are hardworking men and women who are just trying to support their families and do their jobs. And Eddie, to your point, Homer was a consultant on his movie October Sky, and he told me a great story about constantly going to Joe Johnston and saying, well, this isn't exactly right, or that isn't exactly right in terms of how he set up Coalwood and how he set up the mining industry. And Joe very kindly turned to him, Homer, and he said, Homer, you realize we're just trying to sell popcorn here. And there's something to that. There's, for you as a director and a producer, you're just trying to tell a story. What's the genesis of that story? This is not a true story set on one event. So what is the genesis of the Mine 9 story for you, Eddie?
Really, I just growing up in Appalachia, when these coal mining accidents would happen, it was hard, everybody would leave school or you would huddle around the TV and you would watch it. And it's something that stays with you for the rest of your life. So I just took bits and pieces of the various coal mine accidents that happened during my youth and put them into a story. And I fully know there's not going to be a methane explosion with a water sequence, but I didn't want to make the Sago mine disaster or the Upper Big Branch. I wanted to just tell a claustrophobic thriller. So we just tried putting everything into one film. And I know that from a coal mining standpoint, it's technically not correct, nor would MSHA do a rescue in that manner. But to Joe's comment, this is not a documentary and I'm just trying to sell popcorn. I'm just trying to sell some tickets. But I wanted to do it in an honorable way. So I fully am aware that we did not technically get everything right. And I will say, to our defense, man, you would have to study coal mining for years to technically get it right. I mean, it's like making a medical movie and you're not a doctor. Those are highly intelligent, highly skilled people there. So yeah, that's it.
You're exactly right. I think there's a perception as I've traveled around the country that coal mining is this unskilled blue collar job, and there's amazing engineering that goes into that, and really, really smart people down there.
They got to know they got to know CP, they got to know rescue, they got to be mechanics, they're engineers. I mean, if a piece of equipment breaks 2 miles under the earth and you only got, you're only in a 2 or 4 foot seam, you have to work on that piece of equipment there. If somebody gets hurt, you have to tend to them. There is so much going on. My hat's off to these guys. Outside of their bravery, their intelligence, and their, like I said, their camaraderie is second to none.
Clint James, in the movie, you play a character named John who has a family relationship with some of the other miners who are the 9 miners in Mine 9. And you have a religious bent, but also something of a checkered background. Are you a religious guy, and where did you pull from for that character?
Am I personally religious for myself?
Yeah.
Well, I believe in just being an honorable and good person as much as I can be. So I'll leave that there. As well as as far as John goes, yes, he was a religious man. Had some drug issues that he was dealing with. He's a family man, and he takes care of his own. And out of that respect, he got off of drugs. He found God, and went from there. But just as John, as any other character of Kenny and those guys, he was as far as the character development for John. Eddie and I were talking about how well he's not exactly he's like more of a transplant coming from one place, from another mining, and got a job there, got to know these guys for many years, and went from there. So that's where my mindset was when I was doing the character. But they were just more so like in the Air Force and those days, brothers in arms, regardless of who says it's wrong or who says it's right. It's what the job that needs to be done. And so that's how I could kind of relate with that, from the military background to coal mining. It's a job, and without the coal miners doing that job, as Eddie said, you can't flick on that light switch. There's so many things that coal has done for us, and like the military, there's so many things that I didn't want to do. I had a lot of missions I didn't want to do. I didn't see the point in doing it, but that's not my job to say it. My job is to go and take care of it and do it as I was told. And so that's where I just kind of went into that mind frame there for the character, John. But yes, he was a very religious man, and there was some other stuff that was cut out of there, other scenes that we didn't have time to shoot. But yeah, it's based off a real life character, and it was an honor to be able to play him.
As we look at your resume up on the screen now, you've done a whole variety of stuff. And like Kevin, you're a working actor. So you've done big movies like The Magnificent Seven. You've done independent films like Eminence Hill. You've done a lot of TV shows, Chicago Med and Salem, NCIS, New Orleans. What's it like doing an independent movie like Mine 9, which is very physical in nature, and you're on a limited budget? And by the way, it's all up on the screen. It looks like $1 million once you put it up there. But what's it like doing a movie like this where you don't have a Denzel Washington movie kind of budget, and you've got to get it all done and make it just right?
Well, there's a huge difference, Burke. And not saying anything derogatory about either aspect of filmmaking, whether it's television or whether it's independent film. Eddie's film, by far, has been the hardest film I've done to date, and probably will be. I'm not sure I just don't see that happening, and I'm not sure if I look forward to that, if that does happen again.
Hardest in what way? What do you mean when you say hardest? Hardest in what way?
It was not easy. We had to. Eddie and Tim Barrett, they had, the set design, art director, made this whole mine, the studio mine, and that's where I came into play. That's where my set was. That's all I did. As the guy said, I didn't go into the mine, but this was true to life. These are like 3.5 foot ceilings. Again, I'm 6'2". A lot of us are tall guys, having to bend over there for days. And like we said many times before, boy, on that third day, you're hurting. Your knees are hurting, and you think you're in decent shape. You're not. And speaking to these coal miners firsthand, I mean, the respect, the echelons that I had for these men and women went through the roof. I'm like, here I am, hurting after 3 days, and here are these guys, 30 years, 30 plus years. And it's like, I'm just blessed that I was able to play this part, but I'm more blessed that there's people out there like them that are able to do these jobs to be able to support us in our everyday life. Eddie's film was a tough film. This like a TV show. You show up, you get everything catered to. You have your trailer. You you do all this stuff, you know, and they need you on set, you go shoot, you come back. No, we were done up in heavy coal mining, you know, our garments, and then we had, of course, dust and dirt and blood and all that for the time being, and bent over and was trekking through the water, and the water scene was intense. But I wouldn't give it up. I wouldn't change it for the world. It was a blast. I loved every minute of it. Met some beautiful people on that set.
We had
Lifelong friends.
a great virtual session with a couple of the actors from the film October Sky who talked about some of the behind the scenes Hollywood movie making magic. And Eddie, I want to ask you about this photo that we see up on the screen right now of Clint underwater or barely above water here inside the mine. How do you make something like that happen? Pull back the curtain and give us an idea of the movie making magic of how you do these water scenes.
Yeah, we spent probably 4 months building a water tank. It's essentially the shape of a garbage dumpster. It was made out of wood, and then we put steel frames on the outside. And then we saw in the behind the scenes of the movie The Hobbit, they had this big, they had a flood sequence. So they just had like this big, massive dumpster of water on like a rope, pulley rope, and they pull it and it dumps water. So we just had the actors walk, like the water's up to here in the dumpster, it's 4-foot ceiling. So so we just filled the water up to here, made them walk back and forth. Then we drained the water out to here, had them walk further, and just drained it down till it got to their feet. And that's how we filmed the progression of them walking through the water. And then we literally got a man door from a supply shop in West Virginia and put that man door right in the middle of the water tank and dumped, I don't know how many gallons, but it was a ton of water, and just bashed these guys through the man door, more or less, and flooded them out. And that's where Clint's character, John, passes away. But it was fun. I mean, it was like just sort of like the reverse of when you go to a fair and throw the ball and somebody falls into the bucket of water. Sort of like having that big bucket of water dumped on going down a slide and hitting you through a man door.
I'm guessing it was more fun for you, the director, than it was for the actors that had to go through it.
Well, I had to go in the water with him, and we shot the film November 26th through December 16th. So it was ice cold in the middle of the night in Georgia. So we all had like surfer wetsuits on just to be able to maintain. We had to heat the water. I mean, it was tricky, but it was fun as can be.
It's amazing when you watch this movie, and I encourage folks to check it out on Netflix or Amazon Prime or download it at iTunes. It's all up there on the screen. It looks like one of these huge, disaster movies that have $100 million budget. And you just talked about you filmed the whole thing in less than a month. That's incredible. Kevin Sizemore, when you come into a situation like Mine 9, or I guess any of these TV shows or movies that you do, you're suddenly thrust into a situation where you're around a lot of people you don't know at all. And you have to figure out how to form a relationship with them. And in this case, I would assume, especially, as Eddie said, it's a claustrophobic thriller. You're all in there together. You've never met each other before. You're all in different stages of your career. You have guys like Terry Serpico, who, the guy was in Donnie Brasco. He's done scenes with Al Pacino and Johnny Depp, and he's on the show Yellowstone. You've got, young actors who are beginning actors. How do you develop that camaraderie that we see on the screen? Because it really looks as if in Mine 9, you guys really did all grow up together in that coal mining town. You've known each other for your whole lives. How do you do that? How do you make those relationships happen?
I think first and foremost, I think it's the fraternity of being an actor. If you're good enough to be cast on the Mine 9 project, then and Clint's cast on it, and Terry's cast on it, and Aaron and Mark and all these other people, well, then they did something right. So why should I or why should they treat anyone any different because we're on the same page? If we all come into this with the same common goal of, first off, let's have a lot of fun. I mean, first and foremost, let's just enjoy each other's company, get to know each other and have fun. And the more we get to know one another and the faster we get to know one another, the better the film will be, because we have to make up for 15 years of not knowing each other in a very short amount of time. That's why I'm really excited when you do have an opportunity to start filming on a Monday. If they bring you in on the set, maybe on a Thursday, and then you have that weekend and you go out and you have dinner and you get to know each other. So, but in this case, we didn't have that opportunity. People were coming in at different times. I remember when I first met, since Clint's here, Mark and the other guys aren't here, but when I first met Clint, I mean, I just fell in love with him. I mean, not only did I have to, because he's a guy that I've worked in the mines for years in the story, but I just like the guy. There's nothing, I don't know anything about him. He knows nothing about me. And we're starting a brand new relationship from day one. And if you look at a relationship from when you meet someone and you go forward, you don't have the positives or the negatives in the past. That has nothing to do with me. What I've done and what he's done, that has nothing to do with each other. It's how do you treat me and how do I treat you? It's the golden rule, Burke, you know as well. I've said this before. It's do unto others. And if I treat you the way you want to be treated, then vice versa. I mean, that's why Clint and Eddie and I and all these people, we still get, we still talk. I mean, we have a handful of us have a text thread that we still hit each other up all the time because we enjoy each other's company. And we know that we did something special. We know that Mine 9 was going to be, whether, we duplicate things in the future, bigger or smaller or whatever, we know that in this small amount of time, we did a movie called Mine 9 that was special, and it impacted and touched a lot of people, and it certainly touched us.
It's the Virtual Rocket Boys Festival, and we've got a cast reunion of Mine 9, along with the producer and director, Eddie Mansour. Eddie, when you watch this movie now, and you've had to watch it, I don't know, 10,000 times, are there things that you still go, I wish I would have done that differently? Or are you at peace with it? And are you as happy with it as all the critics and all the people who watched it are? Because, you look at the comments on Rotten Tomatoes, all these other websites. I mean, it's just through the roof for this movie. Are you happy with the finished product?
I'm certainly happy. Like, from an outsider looking in, for what we had. I mean, we had to use glue and duct tape and anything and everything. We used almost every piece of footage just to stitch together a movie. We only had 15 days and, it was tough. Like, the only thing that I would really want to change if I could go back is getting more things right for the coal miners, like from a technical standpoint, just to, a lot of people like it. And then you're always going to make some people upset, and I can't make everybody happy, but my goal would be to try to make all the coal miners happy. So if I could go back and do something again, I would, maybe work on some of the technical things more. But, I didn't realize that at the time, and we didn't have a budget to have technical people around. But, if we had a different budget, different time, that's what I would want to fix.
I had the opportunity to see the film in there was a sneak preview screening at an Alamo Cinema Draft House, which has phenomenal sound, and the quality on the screen was just incredible. And then I saw it in the theater several subsequent times, and you look at that movie and you hear that movie, and if you've got big sound whenever you watch it at home, this is one of those that you want to really turn up loudly. I'm not sure this is going to work, guys, but we're going to try something now. I'm going to throw it back to Master Control. Can we play the trailer from this film? I'm not sure if it will come up or not, but we're going to give it a shot here and see if the trailer will work. And if we can't get the trailer up, I want to talk a little bit about the sound and the lights and just sort of the way, Eddie, that you were able to bring this story alive, because it's seamless in the difference between that Atlanta soundstage and the footage that you did in the mine. So how do you make it all come together from a sound and visual standpoint where there are no tells? You can't tell that's fake coal around you at all. How do you make that happen?
Well, we built that. I mean, to tell the second part of it, it took us 11 months to build that set. We built the set over 11 months and shot for 15 days. So a lot of hard work went into making it look like that. But really, like, we let the coal mine depict what we built. Like, we went underground filmed, the continuous miner, the shuttle car. We knew all the basic elements that we needed to film underground. So once we filmed those pieces and once we filmed the real coal miners operating that equipment, that literally depicted what I'm going to build on the set in Atlanta to tie everything together. If we just would have shot on a sound stage without shooting at the real coal mine, it wouldn't have looked anything like that. But it was really, from a visual standpoint, is just being able to truly go underground and film that real equipment. Like I always say, it's like it's Mad Max in a Being John Malkovich environment. And it really is. And then as far as sound design, I certainly did not want any big Hollywood studio score. I thought all like the sound design and the score should go hand in hand with one another. It's the dripping, like when you're underground, you're 2 miles, so there's water all everywhere. So you're always hearing water drips, or you're hearing like a piece of equipment come from around the corner. So all of those different elements that were sound design turned into the score. So it was very raw sounds to bring that realism into it.
Eddie, you told me that there was a time when, quote unquote, big Hollywood was interested in making this movie, and they had asked you for all sorts of changes that you were not particularly happy with, but I'm sure it was a tough decision because there was also big money involved. At the end of the day, are you happy that it turned out this way instead of had big Hollywood gotten a hold of it?
Sure. Yeah, this was a project that I was with 3 different production companies and agencies throughout the course of 6 years, I think.
Wow.
And like it was, I was in a religious deal once, so I had to rewrite it for sort of the more religious thing. And then it was supposed to be just a straight horror movie. And by some point, I just walked away and said, I'm going to leave California because I just want to make a realistic movie and honor these people and really just get away from that. So I literally, like this movie is the reason I left Los Angeles and moved to Atlanta, Georgia. So in hindsight, we would have had, like some bigger name people involved, but we wouldn't have had a set. We wouldn't have went to a real coal mine. Like these actors here, like they're now in hindsight, they were the right choice. Like all of them were amazing. So just because you get actor A that from something, they wouldn't have been as good as what these actors brought to the table, and a set wouldn't have been as good. Like it just would have been a piece, wouldn't have been a good movie, to be honest with you.
And it turned out great. The movie is Mine 9, and it's available at Netflix right now. You can watch it. Check it out this evening, and also visit mine9movie.com. It's now been translated into other languages, and it's premiering all over the world. That must be quite exciting for you, Eddie.
It's absolutely incredible. Financially, I haven't been so amazed because it takes so long to even get paid on these things. But outside of that, it is absolutely incredible for people to be watching your movie in Germany and Poland and all over the world and commenting. And, it's pretty amazing that a little old movie about some hardworking coal miners from Appalachia is getting played around the world. Just because of how small of a film that we are. Like really, all the odds were stacked against us. And, it's amazing, to be honest with you.
And I want before we play the film trailer so the folks can get a look at it if they're not familiar, I don't want to leave something that Eddie said, Clint and Kevin, and that this went on for him for over 6 years trying to get that made. All in, this was a decade of your life to make an hour-and-a-half movie. That's pretty amazing. So hats off to you, Eddie Mansour. And if we can throw it back to Master Control, not sure if it's going to work, but let's see if we can play the trailer now for Eddie Mansour's Mine 9.
ain't going down that line. They gonna shut us down, methane or not. Paycheck's more important than getting shut down. Paycheck ain't gonna mean shit. You died 2 miles in, Kenny. We got no mine rescue. We got no outside foreman. Cutting coal's risky business, son. Gotta hold your own down here, understood? When those pumps give out, and they will, my men are gonna drown 2 miles in. Unless an ignition burns us up first. And we're all sitting right in the middle of it. God's gonna protect us. God will not protect us in hell, John. Screws what you got.
That's Mine 9, and you can check it out at mine9movie.com. Kevin, when you see that trailer, what do you remember? What's the first thing that pops into your mind? And I want to ask Clint that same question.
This is going to sound really silly, and I know people don't understand this, but I get teary-eyed. I mean, I don't know if you can see it. I love it, man. It's just I'm a lucky guy, to be able to do something. I get to play make believe, and I get to go underground and act like I'm working. And you look around, it's all styrofoam, and you look over, and they call cut, and you're high-fiving each other, and you put your arm around each other, and you go out and you have dinner, and then years to come, this is going to be there for the rest of my life. And when I'm dead and gone, my son, my grandson, if we have one, and granddaughter, it's there forever. And I don't think people realize how important art is, whether you're a painter, a musician, an actor, whatever you do in the arts, it's an expression for people to get away and fall into your world for a while and just go, wow, I just want to let my hair down and fall into the world of Mine 9 or whatever show it is. And we have that ability. Eddie wrote a script and directed us in a way to where we can give someone excitement or fear or pain or discomfort or happiness. And I'm just grateful when I see something like that. I'm just grateful.
That's a good one. Clint, when you watch that trailer, what's the first thing popped into your mind? What do you remember?
Well, that was beautiful, Kevin. Everything that Kevin said, that was seriously, watching that trailer was, it just takes you back of how grateful you are to be a part of this project. Thank you, Eddie, again, 1,000 times over, as you know. And Anayate, everybody that was producing. But thank you, Eddie. When I watched that, there's certain scenes that I remember how it is, and nobody's going to know this, of course, but Kevin and I, we did a lot of cracking up. We did a lot of, we gotten close over that, and same as Mark and Terry and Eddie. But there's like that scene when we're all sitting there and we're discussing whether, we're voting on going back into the mine, and there's a point of time where I remember asking Eddie about, how much space do I have? Because I knew what I wanted to do, flip over the table, and it's going to be some kind of funny thing, and it's in the movie. But there's little pieces like that. I remember right before and right after the scene. The scenes, that's that character, and he's just 90 miles an hour, But it's the pieces outside of that, or right before, action, or right after cut, before action, that we just have this bond, and it's like this brother's bond. And like Kevin said, we just, watching that, it just brings you back to that brotherhood of everybody coming together, and that's what we created as coal miners are. That it's a brotherhood, and they're there to watch each other's back and protect them. So it brings back some awesome memories. I can watch it over and over, and I have.
Eddie, we have the incredible opportunity to bring that film back to Appalachia for some screenings. And yes, there was a premiere in Los Angeles. Yes, there was a premiere in New York City and New Orleans, Chicago. But in Appalachia, I had the incredible privilege to be with you guys to see real miners in those theaters come up to you and retired miners. What did they tell you about your movie, Mine 9?
There's so many. Like, we got to premiere it in Princeton at the Chuck Mathena Center, and you and Kevin were a massive part of organizing all that. And it was just one of the most amazing things, just to have all these coal miners come up and just thank you for making a film about them. And they tell us stories, or like, like someone's daughter came in with like her father's lunch pail. Just people telling you stories, and you just doing something that sort of keeps their name and their memory going. It was so meaningful to get to experience that. And that's something that I didn't think in a million years would have happened. So that was just the crown achievement, was the premiere in Princeton, then the premiere in Clarksburg, whenever we did. It was incredible.
I remember Clint specifically at that premiere in Clarksburg at the Robinson Grand, which was completely sold out. A miner came up and spent a lot of time with you, telling you how much that movie meant to him.
Yes. There was a lot of different miners that came up, and the thing is that when we're hearing their stories, and like I said, there was a lot of miners there, and there was a lot of family of miners. It was just almost everyone that knew somebody, or they were married to them. And we would hear stories afterwards, and they were really fast and really quick. But I tell you, you had to take it in so quickly. Heart-wrenching stories, just amazing stories. And it was one after another, and you're so depleted, and you feel so this it's hard to bond with something like that, but I mean, depending on your past, but to understand that, to breathe the same air that they're breathing, I don't. But to hear those stories, it just, I mean, it hit me hard, and it was tough. It was tough to take in. It was just an experience that I probably will never have again. It was amazing.
We have a comment that came in from Debbie Croy. Thanks, Debbie, for watching today. She says it was an accurate description of the condition of the mining industry and the impact of the miners and their families. Kevin Sizemore, you grew up in a coal mining town, in a coal mining region of southern West Virginia, right there on the Virginia border. And you doubtless knew lots of those miners that came up to you at those screenings. What did they tell you about the movie and what you got right, what you got wrong?
Well, like Clint said, it was heart-wrenching. I knew a lot of the people that were there, or my family knew them. And authenticity, really, how the brotherhood, how when you're under the ground, I mean, you're there for one another. You're with them more than you're with your own family. And, I think that became evident when you see the movie. There are people that brought items for us to see, or to take a photograph with, or autograph. One of my friends brought a lunch pail from her dad that was, I think it was 50 years old. I mean, it was just, the coal mining community is such a tight knit group. I mean, the state of West Virginia already, if you're from West Virginia, you're close with a lot of people, and the coal mining community is just so tight. It's the tightest knit group of, excuse me, of really any organization that I can think of. They really look out for one another, and they care for one another, and they help each other without even a bat of an eye. They just do what they have to do. But I remember that night, we were at the Chuck Mathena Center for, Lord, 3-4 hours after it was over. And we're still having conversations in the parking lot. We didn't want to leave, and they didn't want to leave. And, Eddie said it earlier that the movie, is it perfect? Of course not. There's issues with the movie that, well, maybe this wasn't as technical, or maybe that wasn't as technical. And, well, maybe the explosion and the flood wouldn't happen at the same time. And, okay, we know that. Again, to what you said, Burke, you are trying to sell some popcorn there. You are trying to be an entertainer, but you also want to get the movie as right as you possibly can. But when we had our one-on-ones, everyone's going to have their own opinion. But when we had our one-on-ones, you know, they loved it. And again, you're not going to please everyone, and we get that. But we did the best we could with the budget we had and the time we had to do it.
We have a question that came in from Dan, and we'll send this one to Eddie. Did you have to get permission in order to enter the mine for filming?
Absolutely, we had to get permission. To even backtrack that, this was, I know we said it was a decade of my life, but I think even with the writing of the script and everything, it was more like about 15 years of my life.
Wow.
Over 10 years, I was denied getting into coal mines. And in the 11th hour, we were lucky enough to get into a coal mine. And I never really understood why I was not allowed to go to the coal mine and film, because it's highly dangerous to even be on a coal mine. So I know they don't need people there filming because it's dangerous enough. But yeah, we had to get permission, and then you had to take a safety test before you go underground. That was really it, like get permission and take a safety test. And we didn't spend, days and weeks underground. So we were there just enough not to anger them.
Try to stay out of the way.
Yeah, to stay out of their way.
Eddie, Homer Hickam has been very effusive in his praise for Mine 9 as a guy who grew up in West Virginia, and you, of course, have read Rocket Boys, and I'm sure have seen October Sky. What does that stamp of approval from somebody like Homer mean to you for Mine 9?
Well, I know that we haven't even discussed it yet, but to even be on this Zoom conference today is so endearing to me, because he's a legend. I idolize the guy and his story and what he's brought to West Virginia and Appalachia as a whole. So I'm just honored to even be here today. But for Homer to even watch the movie and to say anything nice and that stamp of approval, I mean, that's one of the greatest things that ever happened to me in my life. So
that's
fantastic. It's everything. And being here today, it's such an honor just to know that, I somehow got to participate in the Rocket Boys Festival. It's something that I've known about my whole life, and it's just crazy how the world works. And being a fan of October Sky and all, that was growing up, and all of those, all those movies are my research for the type of stories I want to tell about Appalachia. So to be here today and having Homer say those nice things, thank you.
Fellas, before we wrap up this session of the Virtual Rocket Boys Festival, like everything else, the pandemic has affected what's happening in the movie business, in the television business. Let me start with you, Kevin. What's next in terms of how this is all going to come out the other end? I went by my neighborhood theater yesterday, and it still has that temporarily closed sign up. And I know that lots of actors are unable to work at all. Where do you see this coming out, and how's it all going to play out in the coming months and years?
That's a loaded question, Burke. I really don't know. I would think that this would be the world of independent filmmaking right now. Like, let's, pull up your bootstraps. Let's make the films like Mine 9, those smaller budget films that really can have a life. But you also have to look at some of the protocols that are out there, which does change that budget to where maybe a $250,000 movie might now be $325,000. The $350s might now be $500,000, whatever it may be. I don't have the best answer, because whatever I say is really speculatory, but people just have to stay safe, and hopefully if everyone can stay safe, and then we can move forward. And if we do the right things, in maybe 6 months, we can slowly get back to normal. But I can tell you, for me, I don't know about Clint, but I know for me, Kevin's not doing any filming right now. I mean, not at this moment. All my projects have been moved to 2021. So it's scary, because we, as a world, as we know it, go into movies, and we go to the theaters, and we go there, and we have fun, and we like it. And that's, there's a difference in watching a movie on a TV screen than there is in a movie theater. And, I didn't realize how much I missed it until it was gone. So I really hope and pray that we can get back. And I'm not being selfish when I say that. Oh, poor, pitiful actors and filmmakers. I'm not saying that by no means. I just know how important it is for people all over the world to go see movies. So I hope for that reason we can get back to some sort of normalcy.
And so, Clint, it's not just the actors, not just the faces you see on the screen. When the movie and television industry is essentially completely shut down, what does that affect? Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of caterers and grips and cameramen and lighting and sound people. I mean, it's a whole industry that is backpedaling. You're in Missouri right now. You're not filming in California. You had to bail out of New York City. What's on the horizon for you, and what do you see happening?
Well, what I do see happening in a going to a positive area, auditions are slowly trickling in. Now, whether this is the issue is, when are we shooting? And they have set dates, and there are protocols. I do know people that are working that have been hired. They do get tested. It's like a few days out, you get tested, and then you go straight to wardrobe, you go shoot. But if something happens, production shut down. Like Kevin, I mean, it's hard to say. You can't pin it. My people, the agents and manager, you really can't. They don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. But what I do know is seeing things starting to happen as far as the auditions are coming in. There are set dates to shoot. If they follow the right protocol, we're going to be fine. Slowly. However, I haven't worked all year. You know what I mean? So something's got to change. We got to step it up, or I'm going to be, delivering somebody's mail for them real soon. So,
Eddie, Kevin mentioned the increase in cost to film something in the era of a pandemic. Why would that be? Educate us a little bit. Why does the cost go up 30%, 40%, 50% to film in today's world?
I think what Kevin's just trying to discuss, like, now on a film set, you have to have like a coronavirus, like a safety, what is it called? It's not a medic, but it's like I think they call it sanitary, something.
Yeah, it's almost like a coronavirus. Well, here's what it breaks down is, and I don't know if they're going to end up doing this or not, but it's almost like you need to have a line producer and you need to have a coronavirus producer to run your line budget, because your line producer is doing all this about the film and this and that, and then they also have to throw in the coronavirus numbers, and that like it's every 3 days you have to be tested now. So, a friend of mine, I was talking to him last night, and he has a lower budget film. I think his budget was only $250,000 that he's shooting right now, but every week he's spending almost $20,000. That's a lot when you're doing an independent film.
And I guess for a movie like Mine 9, you physically could not shoot that because, as I think this through, the guys were so much closer together. You have to keep everybody separated out. Is that right, Eddie?
I believe you just keep filming, to be honest with you. Like, I don't come at it from the angle that Kevin and Clint come at it. Like, I look at it like, I'm not working at the level where I would have a sanitization person on set. I believe you just take a coronavirus test. If you're good and you feel good, you got to show up and you got to go to work.
You find a way.
You just got to find a way to do it. Like, I've already shot a pilot to a TV show since this, and it went just fine. And as far as your original question about the cinemas, I believe, yes, you might not have some huge studio films because a lot of the studios are turning away from theatrical. But I believe it's like a gold rush for independent films like myself who have target regions and target markets. I believe there's going to be a lot of opportunity for smaller films to fill up these theaters. And really, the people in those regions want to watch these movies. Not everybody who goes to the movie theater wants to watch a comic book or a Marvel movie. That stuff's for kids. So even though my parents, it's hard for them to go to the theater anymore and find movies that they want to watch. I believe once we get rid of that huge studio stuff, filmmakers like myself might be able to fill those voids and give people in these markets the movies that they want to see in a theater. And as long as the theaters and everybody keep it safe, we get a vaccine going on, we'll get those theaters back open and, keep making product.
I love that. And I will say, as we wrap it up, that in those Appalachian markets where Mine 9 played, I talked to several theater owners, and you sold a lot more tickets than the Avengers movie that was out last year, because people in those markets really wanted to see that movie. That wraps up this session of the Virtual Rocket Boys Festival. I want to thank director and producer Eddie Mansour of Mine 9, cast members Kevin Sizemore and Clint James, and I want to thank you for watching wherever you are. Thanks for participating in our Virtual Rocket Boys Festival. Check out Mine 9 on Netflix, on iTunes, on Amazon Prime, and visit mine9movie.com. Thank you for watching. Bye, everybody.